I think like the biggest theme this year has been on concerns about centralization in the Ethereum staking ecosystem. Obviously, the big elephant in the room is Lido with its 31.7% of ETH staked right now. What are your thoughts there? Like, is this a concern? Is Lido to blame? Like, what should Lido be doing? Anything, if at all? Should it be on users? Like, yeah, what are your thoughts there?
So there are two risks in terms of there are individual staker risks, and then there are protocol wide risks. So the protocol wide risks, there's a good post by Mike Nugent on these risks. But one of the main things for me is that controlling over 30% of the stake, first of all, you can control finality. So you can stop finality, which is obviously a terrible thing, because if the chain's not finalizing, it's not doing its job. That's the first thing. So you could essentially hold the chain hostage at that point. Now, I'm not saying that Lido would, but they would be capable of doing that. And the thing is, it's not that they would necessarily burn the house down, because that's what they could do. They could burn the house down, but then everyone would react to that. It's the fact that they could do things that are grey on the spectrum. So things like preferential treatment for order flow. Things like basically changing the neutrality of the chain to benefit themselves. Now, to a certain degree, that happens with MEV anyway, but they could do it on a very grand scale and on a very consistent scale, and extract far more value than most people would be able to extract in terms of MEV. So that is definitely, for me, that's probably the biggest worry. Like, there's all these burning the house down scenarios, which are bad. They're less likely to do that because they are kind of not, they're reliant on Ethereum. But there are a lot of ways, because they are a profit maximizing entity, they could start extracting value on a much harder scale, undermining the principles of Ethereum in sense of censorship resistance, credible neutrality, and openness. So you can shut down a lot of that stuff by having that much stake. The other thing is on a per person or per staker perspective. So without taking a bond, and Lido at the moment have, per node operator, they have 1%. Each node operator they have has 1% of the stake. Okay. Now, that's an awful lot of stake to be on one node operator. Now, Ethereum's proof of consensus mechanism, as I said before about correlated slashing means that if you get slashed with a whole bunch of other people, with a whole bunch of other validators, your penalty is like exponentially more higher, right? And so if they don't have bonding, they don't have they have like an insurance fund, I think, but it doesn't really cover the amount that they've got. So what that means is they have to pass those penalties on to their stakers. So one node operator fails, takes down 1% of Ethereum, they get slashed horrendously. And all of that gets passed on to the consumer or the staker. So that's the per staker risk as well, which is why we've been kind of saying you shouldn't put all eggs in one basket. Even Rocket Pool, you shouldn't put all eggs in one basket. You should diversify your stake, particularly if you're a larger holder. But also, Rocket Pool itself is, we don't suffer from that same issue of correlated slashing risks. And not only that, we also have bonds to cover all of that, or bonding to cover all of that damage. By
correlated slashing risks, do you mean that, okay, so each Lido node has 1% of Ethereum staked.
Yeah.
And if one of those nodes were slashed, the amount that they'd be slashed would be higher than normal because they of the amount that they control. Is that how it works?
Yes. So, actually, the way to say it is a normal slashing would cost something like 1.5 ETH or something like that. But that's if you get slashed randomly, right? So, or if you get slashed and then within a certain time period, lots of other people get slashed at the same time, that becomes a correlated slashing, and it means that the penalty that those people pay for being slashed increases. So you can actually take all of your in the worst case scenarios, it can actually take all of your 32 ETH. So that's that's kind of like the correlated slashing case. And because they've got 1% of the network, if that 1% was to get slashed all at the same time, now they've probably got safeguards to kind of like break it up and that sort of thing, but there's still, technology risks happen all the time. And even Amazon, go down, like a whole region will go down. So, and so a whole node operator, could essentially go down if they get, or actually particularly if they get slashed. But if they get slashed, it means that they will take out 1%, and 1% will be correlated slashing, and then they'll be penalized much, much harder.
I think the argument I've seen is that node operators on Lido are independent parties, so they can't really coordinate or collude or anything like that. Do you think that's fair?
Well, they can. They can. Now, whether they will or not, they're known entities. They're known to each other because they have to coordinate between each other. So not only there is communication channels open between those parties. I think also the fact that the Lido DAO controls who can be a node operator is a big contentious point. Particularly how centralized the Lido DAO is in terms of like token distribution and that sort of thing. So that's a big thing in terms of if node operators, if they wanted to force node operators to do a particular thing, they could, because they could just kick them off. And so, that's definitely a factor as well.
The only thing to do about it is, from your perspective, is to offer an attractive competing service.
Yeah, a permissionless service. Yeah, where node operators don't know each other. We got 3,000 node operators. They're in loads of different parts of the world. They all run different setups. They're all very different people. Very different individual node operators. A lot of them running from home. Some are businesses as well. We're getting staking as a service businesses being built on Rocket Pool. So we just got this ecosystem of stakers and node operators and that sort of thing.